Most of us know the saying, "Houston, we have a problem." Those iconic words were said during the Apollo 13 space mission. Commander Jim Lovell delivered the matter-of-fact message with almost no emotion.
Houston, we've had a problem.
But NASA realized it was a life or death situation, and Mission Control launched themselves into action with one goal: solve the problems and bring the astronauts safely back to Earth. It was a life or death situation, but usually change doesn't come like that, does it? Usually it looks quite different. It comes with news that change is coming our way. Years later, NASA called me with another problem. This time, the cancellation of the Space Shuttle program. I first learned this mindset after a presentation for NASA, after the cancellation of the Space Shuttle program and what resulted in 24,000 people losing their jobs. After my presentation, I talked with many of the attendees, but two conversations stand out. The first was with a NASA engineer who lamented about the future. He said, "Mark, I'm a rocket scientist. That's what I do. Now what?" Even though he was a brilliant man, he didn't see any options. The second person was Linda Weatherman, the CEO of the Economic Development Commission. She said to me, "Mark, this is a time of great opportunity. We're going to pivot from a government space program to commercial space companies." And I remember thinking, private space companies? Who's ever heard of such a thing? And yet, as she predicted, 1 year later, on May 25th, 2012, SpaceX sent the first commercial spacecraft to transport goods to the International Space Station, and the industry continues to grow. How do we adapt? How do we adapt in exponential times? How do we adapt in a VUCA world? Do you know that term, VUCA? VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That certainly describes my world. What about you? Are you living in VUCA disruption? Well, the question, again, I want to go back to living in this kind of world, in these kind of times. The question, how do we adapt, really depends on, I think, the answer to that question is, what kind of person are you? And how do you respond to change? Liminality comes from the Latin word limen, which means doorway. Why doorway? Maria hinted at it. Liminality is actually the study of transitions. Study of transitions. Where does doorway come into it? Well, think of it this way. Every one of you entered this room through one doorway, didn't you? Now, I've been here since early morning. I've watched many of you come into the room and go out of the room. Every one of you came in through one of the doorways. I tell you what I didn't see. I didn't see one of you do this. Not one of you did this. Not one of you opened the door and went, no. You opened the doorway, you walked right in. You walked right in as if it were nothing, which it is, unless what we're talking about is transitions. Transitions is all about either being mobilized to go through the doorway, to go from one reality to the next. It's either being about being mobilized, or it's being about paralyzed. What happens in every transition is every one of us, as we step into the change, as we step into that transitional period, everyone gets stuck. Maybe momentarily, maybe just for a few seconds, some permanently. What they see as they go through the transition is too much for them, and they remain stuck right there. So when you think about change, when you think about transitions, really what makes change most difficult, I believe, is the transitions. And I want to give you tools today that can help you to shorten that period of transitional time. It's through this doorway of transitions where the process of change actually begins. It's as Gail said, it's where we learn to adapt. It's about adaptation. The best illustration that I can give is the process of metamorphosis. As we see here, this caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Process of transformation. Transitions take time. Change happens fast. Transitions never do. But the good news about transitions is that there are actually stages that I'm hinting at. And these stages are predictable. That's very good news because for many people, change, transition is all about the unknown. But there are many, many things that we do know in transitions. My three-stage model of transitions talks about stage 1 being the stage of crisis. Stage 2, limbo. Stage 3, the new reality. Stage 1 is the crisis stage. It's a time of separation from the past. It's an ending to the old way of doing things. It's characterized often by a time of anxiety, worry, and panic. Remember in the early days of the pandemic buying a lifetime supply of toilet paper? I did. But in the midst of these feelings, there are also positive feelings. Many people in stage 1 are still hopeful that this will be over soon and supportive of one another. But what we need to know about each stage is that at each stage, there's work that must be done. If we are able to do the work of this stage, we then are able to progress on to the next stage. If we are unable to do the work, we remain stuck in that stage. The work of this stage that must be done, we must learn to accept and let go. That's the work of stage 1. Stage 2 has very different work, but this is what we need to be able to do right away in stage 1. Not easy to accept and let go because some people, many of us, feel frightened, hesitant because of the unknown. They don't know what will happen. They don't even understand what this change is all about. We need to know, what is the change? What will be different? And who's losing and gaining what? Let's look at stage 2. Stage 2 is described as the stage of limbo. It's people who are in the midst of stage 2, and many of us are in stage 2 right now, are in between. We're on hold. Characteristics of stage 2, very different from stage 1. Characteristic, time slows down. In fact, many of the difficulties of stage 2 are directly related to time. Change happens fast. As I said, transitions never do. And during stage 2, many people feel very different than the way that they felt at stage 1. They still feel anxious and worried, but now in stage 2, many people are frustrated, tired, overwhelmed. Positive feelings are often gone. People are feeling stressed out, and some are even feeling depressed with the changes that are continuing to happen. What happens in stage 2? Nothing seems to go as planned. Stage 2 is actually the stage where we learn to adapt. And the adaptation that happens is all about us learning new skills, learning what we need to know and learning what we need to do. After doing the work of stage 1 and 2, stage 3 is the stage of the new reality. This is when and where the change happens. The work of stage 3 is quite simply to let go again of the past and do it. This stage is by far the easiest of the 3.